Welcome to South Omaha Speed. We got Eric Johnson in the house today. John's here with the big camera, and we're talking Oldsmobile powered hot rods. I got a note from Daryl in Canada, from Edmonton, Canada. This guy writes me up, and he's like, hey, great car. I've been watching your channel, and why are you putting an Oldsmobile in this thing? What's the story with that? So to understand why we're putting an Olds motor in this car, we got to go back. And Eric helped me do this schematic here on the whiteboard, and across the top are the years up there. So when you get into the hot rod era of 28, 31, the Model A's, and you go from 32 to 41-ish, right, all the way to World War II, that's when all that early Ford iron was built. And in 32 is when the V8 flathead came out. And that's when, plentiful, everybody could buy them, cheap, right? When you think about my dad building a car in 1959, he started his Model A project in 1960-ish or 50, maybe 61. I might have been right there, 1960. A neighbor gave him a car, a free a flathead car that he got the motor out of. It was a 54 that he got it for free, 4-door, and that's where he got his drivetrain for his first car. So if you picture that, what was happening in 1960 with the flatheads, they were basically giving them away or next to nothing. So if you look at this chart here and you think about all the hot rods that had Ford flatheads in them, and then when you get after World War II, and now people are building hot rods, they're back from the war, and they got all these cars with flathead Fords in them. And what was the first choice? Non-flathead. And when you think about what a flathead is too, you got to look, it's very similar to a Briggs & Stratton, right? The valves are in the head. And then when you think about an overhead conversion motor or an overhead valve motor, like that picture there, and there's a head here that Eric found in the shop, thanks bud, for bragging this over here. And you can see the combustion chamber and the two valves here right above the cylinder. Now in a flathead, this would look very similar, but there wouldn't be any valves. There'd be a combustion chamber, and you can see the spark plug in there, but there wouldn't be any valves because they're actually in the block. So that's the difference here we're talking about. And so when you're thinking about this non-breathing flathead that we're restricted because that air is going to make that turn to come out of the valves and get in the combustion chamber versus just coming right down top of the piston, your first choice to get away from that flathead in 1949, they came out with the Olds and the Caddy motor. And that's what this is right here, 1949 Olds. So if you're trying to go cutting edge and make more power than the flathead, this was your first chance to get your hands on something that was overhead valve, basically. It was a 1949 303 or a Cadillac engine.
And you're adding displacement too versus your flathead at 239 inches. This is 303 inches. So
big.
You're
right.
Way beyond the capabilities of flathead.
Was a Cadillac, Cadillac was even bigger, wasn't it, than the old motor?
I don't know that for a fact.
Right, but could have been bigger. So basically you're talking big cubic inch. And when my dad talks about running the streets back in the day, when he was in high school, he graduated in 62, Olds Rocket was a hot rod. I mean, the full size, the Rocket 88, the 78 was the 6-cylinder, right? I think, and the 88 was the V8, and then the 98 was the V8 with all the options. So your 88 was your kind of regular man's car that was fast. It wasn't as heavy, right? And I think, so that's the ones that everybody kind of wanted. And I think the first rock and roll song ever recorded was Rocket 88 was the name of the song at Sun Studio like in 1949-ish. So it was a big deal when the Rocket 88 came out. So when you think about that, and why would you put an Oldsmobile in a car, you got to think about that first year for the overhead valve, and that was 1949. And then so if you go down the chart here, 1951 was your first Hemi, and then you got 1953, 54. 53 was the first year for Y-Block for Lincoln, and then I think it came out in the Ford car in 54. The Buick came out, I think in 50. Was it 53?
53 on a Buick.
Okay, and then 55, what happened there, Eric? The world changed.
Small block Chevy.
And the Pontiac, right, was overhead valve. And then, not that you're rating that together, but they both came out the same year. And then in 58, they had that big 392 Hemi, which was probably in the 50s, that was probably the big bad that everybody wanted, I would assume, right?
Pinnacle displacement and power.
Yeah, I think a 4-barrel, the 2.4 motor was 380 horsepower, I think, or 375. So as you look at that chart and you think about where the coupe was in this year range, everything in green was basically this coupe. So in 1952, Bob Hartwell, he moved to town like in 51. In 52, he starts building this car downtown South Omaha, and he put a 52 Olds motor in it, just like this one right here, 1949 303. That was his first pick, and he actually worked for Chet Herbert camshafts. And from what I understand, the motor might have been stock at first, but eventually it had 56 heads on it. and I think it had a Chet Herbert camshaft into a roller cam.
In that one description, it talks about boring it to 4 inches, which I don't know if that's even possible on a 303 block. But
okay, we think later on they had a bigger holes in it at some point.
Correct.
Right. So as you go on, so in '56, Bob Shukart and Howdy Williams at that time had owned the car because Bob Hartwell sold it 55. So when you think about that, in 1956, they put a small block Chevy in it. They actually went to a Chevy dealership and bought a brand new 265 cubic inch small block Chevy and put it in. And I'm not sure what they did for a tranny, but I think, John, what do you think if we give Bob Shukart a call? You good for that?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's give him a call. See what they did for a transmission. This is Bob Shukart. He was Howdy Williams' friend, and he helped put a small block Chevy in his car in '56. Hello.
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah.
What's going on, buddy?
I don't know.
So I got you on the speaker here. We got Eric Johnson here, and John's filming with the big camera, and we're just kind of walking through the car and the different engines it's had in it. And we kind of got to 1956, and I know you were involved in putting that small block Chevy in it. And we just want to know if you want to talk a little bit about that, if you remember what kind of training you guys ran and how you adapted that.
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, it had a Ford transmission, the old Ford, and the old Ford were in, and I don't remember if it was a quick change at that time. I don't think it was. But it just had a top loader Ford transmission and the Chevy adaptive bell housing. Not exactly sure where the bell housing came from, whether Howdy bought it or, I know I didn't, but Howdy might have, or we might have had somebody that had one, you know.
Right.
we just kind of slightly questioned maybe the availability that early on, because that engine was only a 1 year old or maybe a year and a half old situation.
Somebody started making it right off the bat, as I recall. They were available because we did not build a bell housing for it.
Copy that. Very cool. So you were running torque tube and everything, just like you were before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Very nice. And you guys ran a radiator with that engine, or was that, you had a radiator, or?
I don't remember. I would think so, but I don't remember.
Right. And you were thinking that Howdy bought that brand new at a dealership, correct? That engine?
Actually, I did.
Oh, you did?
And when I went to the service, yeah, it's a brand new engine in the crate, complete with flywheel and clutch, and I'm not too sure it didn't have a water pump on it. It was $395.
That's a lot of money though.
And it had intake manifold, didn't have a carburetor on it though.
4-barrel, I would take it, correct?
No, 2-barrel.
2-barrel.
Do you guys think you ran that 2-barrel, or did they build something different for induction for it, or do you recall?
I don't know. I don't remember what I would get to put a fuel pump on it, like you under pump and pump the gas out of the tank. I don't know. I don't remember that much about that far up.
Right. It was only 60 plus years ago, Bob. What's going on?
Right.
Did you guys build your own headers for that too? Do you remember any of that? Probably. Sure. Okay.
Did it seem, I mean, I know these are long ago questions, but to go from Olds power, which sounded like a pretty rowdy combination when you read about it, going to a out of the crate small block Chevy that probably made less than 200 horsepower. It almost sounds somewhat, other than the weight advantage, that slightly going backwards. Do you recall any of that or not?
Well, no, because when Howdy got it, there wasn't any engine in it. And I can't tell you what Hartwell was doing with the engine at that point unless it was in the 40.
Okay.
And I don't remember any more than that about it. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
So going from 0 to a small block Chevy was an update.
And we got the Chevy just to, because we thought maybe a little bit quicker than a flathead, who knows, you know.
Sure.
You bet.
That makes a lot more sense.
In the early days.
So I just heard a story this week that from Don Chase, your old friend Don, and he made it sound that when Hartwell left town in late '55 and sold the car to Howdy with no engine, and he kept his big Olds, he was leaving town because maybe he was having issues with the local police for speeding around in hot rod, and they were going to lock him up if they caught him again, so he had to get out of town and move back to California. Any thoughts on that? No,
I don't. I'm
you don't
sorry.
know. No, it's okay. It's okay. Well, let's just throw it out there because that's what Don Chase had told me, which sounds like a great story. You know what I mean? You got to leave town because the cops are chasing you.
I really don't know. And I don't know when Howdy ended up with the Hartwell motor, because between 56 and 60, when I was in the service, Howdy ended up with that motor and had the motor in a dragster. And it was in a dragster when, like in 61 or 62, and then I bought it from Howdy.
Okay.
And actually, when I bought it from Howdy, the clutch had blown up and blew the bell housing off the back of the Olds. And he kept the parts, and like I told you earlier, we haggled it together, and I ran it for 5-6 years with no problem. So
awesome. Very cool. Well, hey, Bob, we appreciate you taking the time and answering our call. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. And listen, I'll have those headers in August when I get there.
Oh, great. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And I finally figured out how I got 4 pipes onto a 3-pipe Oldsmobile head. I was looking at, there's a guy on YouTube that's rebuilding the old Oldsmobiles and the old putting big valves and the old heads and stuff. And a set of heads he had, the port was wide enough that I could open it up farther to put 4 pipes on it. That was kind of cool.
Okay.
That's all on YouTube. I forget the name of the place, but they're rebuilding the old Oldsmobiles.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I understand it's cold there now.
Well, yeah, it got cold on us. It was nice, and then it got cold, and we're ready for it to be nice again. We're ready for summer.
80 degrees here today, so I'm sorry.
Well, we appreciate you calling from Florida, taking the call. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Take
All right,
care.
brother. See you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was a great conversation we had with Bob, and just learn a little more history about it. So, yes, they put a small block Chevy, and they did have the Ford 3-speed with the torque tube, just like for some reason I had thought that, but it was good to clarify that. So, but when you think about that adapter they had got, which he's not quite sure where they got it from, but you got to figure when in 49, when they first put the first hot rod Oldsmobile in a hot rod with the old Ford tranny, they had to have those adapter plates. And this one here is a good example, but this is an easy adapter plate to make because it's just flat. But when you think about a motor that doesn't have the bell housing built into the block like this one does, now you're gonna have to make a big chunk of aluminum out here to make sure everything's square and have the holes in the right spot. So as the years progress and these new motors come out, these aftermarket companies, and who do you think, Speed Gems?
Transadapt, Speed Gems, Krager made some adapters, B&M made adapters. I don't know to that at that era, I'm not for sure, but you would think that'd be a very profitable venture to build adapters to put the new small block Chevy behind a Ford transmission or any other sort of application.
When you think about Tommy T-Bird, he was down here and he made his own. He made 8 adapters back in the day to go Oldsmobile motor to old Ford trannies, and he sold them actually. He made enough for his own car, you know, for his one he needed. He made extras and sold them. So when you think about all these cars are out there that have these Ford flatheads in them, and all these new motors are coming out in the 50s, that these companies wanted to make that, like you had mentioned, make the adapter plates to fit to the old Ford tranny. So these, because once you get away from that, once you get away from the old Ford tranny, and now you get away from your torque tube, you gotta locate the rear end with trailing arms. You gotta go open drive shaft. You gotta make new mounts for everything. These adapter plates made just putting a motor in a lot simpler than having to redo the whole drivetrain.
And
basically,
you didn't have a lot of options too, as far as rear end wise. I mean, your other option would have been like a 55 Chevy rear end as well, which is not that durable, more durable than a Banjo rear end would have been, but
right.
94 didn't even exist
right
at that point in time.
The big Olds came out in 49.
That was a very just durable, but I think that's
it's probably way
57 Olds is kind of always the rear end that people talk about. I'm going to put that in my Gasser or Willys or whatever situation. So
plus your bolt pattern's off, your wheels don't fit no more if you had some kind of special wheels on it, right?
That's a good point too.
So when you think about all these different motors coming out in the 50s and all the adapters being built, and then when you follow the green line here, and we're talking about the coupe now, so in 56 had small block Chevy in it, had the Ford tranny, and then they put a bigger Olds in it when it was the orange crate, sounds like. And I know in that one article that Bill Hanna had in the World Herald, when it was the orange crate in 59, it was at the auto show, it talked about having a Ford 3-speed transmission in it still too, correct?
Yes,
so
and Banjo 444 gears in it.
Yep. So when Howdy ran the car in 57, with a big Oldsmotor in it, and he had a LaSalle tranny in it. He must have kept that LaSalle when he sold it to Bill Hanna.
Or broke it.
Or broke it.
Which is probably pretty difficult to do.
Right, especially with the salt.
Right.
I mean, but he may have broken a drag strip too, but you figured the rear end quick change would break before that thing broke, you would think, but it's hard to say. And then in the 60s, they were going to put a 58 Hemi in this thing. I don't know if it ever made it in the frame rails or not, but they were gearing up to put the motor in, and I guess it broke in the car that it was in. Their hot rod Hemi broke and never made it into the frame rails. The guy that talked to my dad. So anyway, so that give you a little rundown of Daryl in Canada. Thank you for the question. Appreciate that. And that'll give you an idea of why we're putting an Oldsmotor in this thing and trying to do it right. So basically we're gonna go through the different stages of the car's life here. We're gonna put the early 303 in just like they did in 52, and then we're gonna put a bigger Olds in it. We got that already purchased. It's a 371, and then we got the Hemi sitting here too. So we got three different. We got everything with a small block Chevy for this thing, and yeah.
Okay, just skip that.
Eric says let's skip the small block Chevy, and he's a small block Chevy guy. But I guess if we ever did take it to Bonneville, which is the plan, to the USFRA event, the World of Speed, and we run that 130 mile an hour course, my old man's kind of got a rowdy small block that if we're gonna take something out and just wring the shit out of it, beep. Sorry. I would rather probably twist a small block Chevy and run it through its paces versus one of our.
Versus something vintage.
Yeah, versus something vintage, absolutely. So, and his small block Chevy, I think, is a 63 327 that he's got too. So it's still pretty vintage if we throw it in there. So that's the plan. Daryl, we appreciate you. Keep those questions coming. We'll try to answer them as they come in, and we appreciate you watching. Thanks so much. Tell your friends and neighbors. Eric, thanks for coming in today. Johnny, we'll catch you next time. Hit subscribe. Appreciate you. Thanks.